I started work in Portumna Workhouse as a researcher and a guide. I love the history of people. Portumna does not have the records that it should have. It doesn't have the minute books from the meetings or the books that basically counted and told a story of who came in and who left the workhouse. So we're at a huge disadvantage in Portumna. If you want to find out something about somebody who lived or existed in Portumna Workhouse, you have to go to the archives, or namely the newspapers. If they did something quite extraordinary, you might find them in there. And Johnny Butler was one of those people. So Johnny Butler was born in 1891 in the workhouse. He lives his life there up to the age of 15, and somewhere in the middle, I think he's about 7 or 8, he's picked out, he's spotted by the Earl of Westmeath. So this is where Johnny Butler was educated, and it wasn't very long before they noticed how clever he was. You know, so we have loads of references to different school mistresses here, so it was more than likely a mistress that was his teacher, school mistress. So she would have picked up on how bright this little boy was. There's that famous quote in the newspaper about this infant prodigy, that he's been noticed from about the age of 5. You know, he's a sensation, he's a marvel, and he piques the interest of the local gentry here as well. From the Dublin Daily Express, 5th of September 1898. One of Lord Westmeath's most ardent admirers is a wonderfully bright child named Johnny Butler, an orphan inmate of Portumna Workhouse. He is only 7 years old, and for the last 2 years has earned the title of infant prodigy. He has a marvellous memory and can at will name correctly every considerable town, mountain, river on the globe, point it out, and give an accurate description of the characteristics of each. So this newspaper article existed, okay, so I rediscovered the article, and I just looked at it and looked deeper into it to find out, where did he go? You know, what became of Johnny Butler? You know, we have the article, that's fine, but you know, he has this special talent. He has to have done well for himself. So I was almost nervous and apprehensive, you know, in finding him. You know, did he actually do well? You know, if he was born into let's say the Nugent household in Palace, you know, he probably would have been a scientist, because he would have had that money to back him up and send him to the top universities in England or Europe. But because he was born into a workhouse, you know, I was just intrigued, you know, to find out did he get a chance in life. And it did take a lot of research. And I knew, or I found out, that there was butlers in Portumna, you know, up to recent days, and I had to kind of work all the way back. And with the help of Billy Martin, a local historian in Portumna, he was able to just give me that final little link. So the job that Johnny ends up getting is the toll collector on Portumna Bridge. You know, it's a decent job, it's a good job. He's now an upstanding member of the community. Because he's a pauper coming from the workhouse, it probably doesn't matter how intelligent he is, he needs somebody in power to push his application through. My theory is that Johnny Butler gets the job on the bridge in Portumna because his friend from the workhouse, the Earl of Westmeath, either writes him a reference or, you know, has a word in somebody's ear and literally gets him in there. His job was to be the toll collector, but that also came with a house, which was very important. The house is situated right on the bridge. Actually, the county boundary runs right through the house. And it was also a job for his son and his son after that. I suppose deep down I was looking for something to reference the workhouse, or to connect Johnny back with or the Earl of Westmeath, maybe a photograph of the two of them. I suppose I was hoping beyond hope. And even as the door was closing, I was still looking around to see could I spot something. And I'm still convinced there might be some little photograph somewhere. The job on Portumna Bridge is quite unique, I suppose, and quite important. Even today, that job is still done manually. So somebody has to physically open the bridge and close it. And everyone accepts it locally that you could be waiting at the bridge at any given point in the day. So Johnny as well, in his role, he'd be the first person you'd see on your way into Portumna from the Tipperary side. You know, he's the guy you're going to meet. And also, if you're coming from the Galway side and you're leaving Galway, he's the last person you'd see. So everybody would have been familiar with Johnny Butler. In my research in the workhouse, I kind of started this file called The People of the Workhouse, and I'd fished through the archives, and unfortunately, you know, which is not surprising, most of the stories that made the newspapers were sad stories. You know, there was suicides and there was robberies and there was, you know, people being very, very sick and in poor conditions. And then this little gem pops out, you know, a childhood prodigy. And I suppose I wanted and I was willing this boy to have done well. The workhouse needed a good story, because when you give a tour in Portumna Workhouse, you know, some people cry, you know, some people look obviously very sad. It can hit a nerve with them. So you need to be able to tell them, you know, at least one good story. And with Johnny Butler's story, we have that. It's a story of hope. You know, this child born into the workhouse, there's no hope. There's no hope for him in life, you know, and he's just born with this raw talent, and it's recognised. Thankfully, it's recognised, and whoever reported into the newspapers, you know, just this one little report, you know, it's kind of sealed his memory in the folklore of Portumna, in the folklore of the workhouse.